Jamie, excess mortality, I think the last report from the Office of National Statistics was for the week of July the 22nd, and it was running at 18% excess mortality. That's rather a lot. Are you surprised it's not getting more play?
No, Mark, good evening. I think it's probably worth starting actually where we are over what we've seen over the last 2 years. And remember now, we've seen over 140,000 excess deaths since the start of 2020. And people can't die twice. So you would expect the longer you go into, say, the pandemic and beyond the pandemic, that you start seeing deaths start becoming below average, because people obviously who may have been dying now may have been tragically killed earlier on during the pandemic. So yeah, what we've seen in 2022 so far is that up until around week 15, deaths were actually below average. And it's since then we've started seeing deaths go above average. And the total, if you take the whole year altogether, we're running about 3.8% above average for 2015 to 2019 when you compare that and the 2022 figures that we've got now. Now, the latest week's figures are quite high. They're the highest we've seen over the course of the year so far. Now, there will be a slight impact of the heat wave. You do normally see a little spiking deaths across the country when you see a heat wave. Nowhere near, though, Mark, the kind of the doomsayers who were saying we might see 10,000 deaths because of the heat wave. Nowhere near that. But that's why the latest week's numbers are a little bit high. But just go before that, they've been running about 11 to 15% over the past few weeks above average. Now, what I've done is, because you don't normally see that in the latest figures every week, is crunch the numbers in terms of different age groups. So if we look at the under 10s across the country, now the deaths for 2022 for under 10s, they've actually been running below average. Now, people who are aged 10 to 19, they're about 8% above average. The other age groups where we start to see kind of double digits above average is 30 to 39-year-olds, they're 11% above average. 55 to 59-year-olds are 13% above average. And then the biggest group is 75 to 79. Now, they're 15% above average. But you've got to remember, we've got the post-war, Second World War baby boomers now hitting 76, 77 years old. There's a lot of them. So we've got more in that age group. So it's not surprising we're seeing more deaths in the 75 to 79 age category. But there is something underlying going on in these other age groups as well, which I think does need a good investigation so we can be a bit reassured what the hell is going on there.
Yeah, what about, you mentioned the increase in, basically in deaths of teenagers, which is tragic. It offends against the natural order. If a mother has to do as that poor lady did, and her son's late home, and she has to go out and she finds him, quote, unresponsive in the woods. There have been actually quite a lot of deaths of young men 15 to 19. Why, you know, we go on all the time about, oh, we're doing it for the children, this is for the children, it's about the future of all our children. When you have excess mortality of teenage boys, why is there such little interest in it?
Well, I'm not sure on this, Mark. Obviously, you're covering the story quite a lot. And remember, the way the deaths work, if there's something that's kind of unknown about a death or something that's sudden, when you've been talking about sudden death, you don't then just suddenly go and register the death. You would normally have a coroner's inquest to look at the circumstances around there. So there should be, when we start looking over time now, because remember, these are deaths that have been registered. The ONS will only publish these deaths when they've been notified of the death. So there'll be some deaths that may have actually occurred at the moment that are not in the system yet because they'll await a coroner's verdict. Now, there's a number of factors that could be behind all of this. What we do know is that there's a story out this week about A&E wait since April. So we've been seeing these excess deaths since the start of April. Now, we have seen COVID deaths go up in recent months, Mark, with the latest wave that's kind of dying down now. But that does not explain that we're seeing more non-COVID excess deaths. Some of it is to do with the aging population. There are a few more people than we're comparing to an average. But, you know, A&E waits have gone up dramatically since April. People have been staying home, protecting the NHS for 2 years. All these misdiagnoses that is going on. So there's a lot of factors at play.
Well, and just to underline the point you made at the beginning, if you have excess mortality because of COVID in the spring of 2020, that in theory, once that's worked its way through, as you say, by now we should actually be having lower mortality rates, because as you explained it to us, a fellow who might have lived out and keeled over in 2023 died of the COVID in the spring of 2020. So this 18% excess death rate, as you say, it's not explained by the COVID, and there seems to be a certain I would say institutional lack of interest, and certainly a media lack of interest. Thank you very much for running those numbers for us, Jamie. It's always good to see you.